happy gathering for the June walk, the famous Chase the Orchid walk. We're wondering if we could find a Fen Orchid, but I gather that's very rare this year. But there are some wonderful orchids out there, the Pyramid Orchid and the Southern Marsh Orchid and Early Marsh, and I hopefully we'll find the Bee Orchid, so one or two others. But what we're going to do, we're actually going to wend our way towards Kenfig Pool first of all. Amazingly, it's very wet out there, and when you'll get there, it almost looks like the Everglades. Remember the famous, what was it, Del Boy story in the Everglades? And it did remind me when we go over there. So we're going to go, and then we're going to cut back in and just steadily get onto the top of the dunes, where we begin to see quite a few orchids either side there, surprisingly. And then when we get to the sea, there's an abundance of pyramid orchids, and they really are lovely this year. So we look at that, and then we walk along the coastal area, and then turn back in where there's a lovely slack there where the Fen Orchid would normally be found. Well, whether or not we'll find one, I don't know. I can't promise that. But if there's any chance, we will find it. But there might be one or two rare strawberries there, the wild strawberries. And then we come back to another slack that I know Brian and Sandra, from many years when we first went on these orchids, we found a lot of Hellbreen orchids there, didn't we, in that time? And Tway Blades as well, so we found a lot. So we're going to go all the way round and then come back, and then at the end I shall show you the Bee Orchid, and then hopefully we'll have found one or two. Whether or not we'll track the Fen Orchid down, we can't be certain, but we'll have a good go. Okay, let's go.
Starting from the Kenfig Nature Reserve car park, we walked some 2.5 miles down towards the sea following this route. Quick detour here. 1 mile and down to the sea. Across the seafront. 2 mile marker. And back to the Kenfig Nature Reserve car park.
They say that originally there was just a thin strip of dunes on the far side going back. I mean, it was argued 4,000 years, and then they bring us up to a far more recent time, and then they talk about the different type of vegetation that was here, and the impact of the sun and the moon on various activities of it, and the way in which this was, in fact, so they say, a trading centre. Where there was like a labyrinth of actual trading areas around here, and it loosened the original vegetation that was here, and then a combination of all the dunes being loosened and all the plant life loosened on it resulted in huge changes. It was said that the inundation actually came in about a couple of miles. It was running right inside here, all the way here, and there are stories about the Church of St James's in Pyle having been removed from the Maudlin area and built over in Pyle. And it said that's why it's called the upside down church, that the brick which is there is actually turned upside. You see the colour of the brick showing how it was all changed. St James, that's right.
In Kenfig.
In Kenfig, that's right, they moved it. As we look across we're now in the bird hide, and as we look right across Kenfig Pool, we can look across not only at the marsh area and the surrounds of the pool, which is natural habitat for many of the birds and waders, but also look across to the mountain. And we were up on Margam Mountain just some 3 weeks ago. And of course, many of us were fortunate enough to see Matt Baker and his team who were filming on Margam Mountain when they were looking at the rhododendrons and the concerns which they had for the stags and the deer in that habitat. And that programme was shown on Country File last Sunday. So it was fascinating for us to see this. But today, beautiful day. It's the day before the summer solstice. Lovely warm day, temperature about 22 degrees, 23 degrees. And so we're just taking our time now, having looked first at the bird hide in this almost Everglades area. But now we're going to move across and into the higher part of the dunes.
What are these blue dragonflies hovering just above the sand?
They're blue dragonflies.
Yeah.
I don't think we can go any further than that.
But what I find fascinating there, Stuart, on those dragonflies is by and large, it does show settled weather, doesn't it? I remember this as a boy. My grandfather always said that to me. When I used to see the dragonflies or the others coming, there is a period of settled weather. Well, here we are, we're finding our special caterpillar. Look at him, there's our caterpillar. Oh, but we haven't quite found alligators here, but we're moving from the Everglades now. We're moving up to the high dunes, and we've seen this caterpillar on the way. So there we are, small insects and large animals, find the lot. Can you see this group here? This is perhaps the first of the little groups of pyramidal orchids that we've got, and these are beautifully formed, just at the right height, and they're the sort that leave you with no doubt that these are the pyramidal ones. They're not the possibility of early marsh or the southern marsh. They're not tall enough for that, and they've got this beautifully completed top, almost coming a little bit pointed, but not totally so. It's slightly round, slightly total, but they are a lovely colour at this time of the year, and it's really nice to see it here because we're right at the top. This is the real top dunes area. In fact, if you look on the very far side, can you just see the roofing of Scare House? Can you just see it there in that little sort of inundation there at the top end? Scare House over there, Stuart, right at the far side. And just on the end of this set of dunes here, we'll be cresting, the sea is just on the other side. So we're going to head our way now over here along this higher part of the dunes. We've left the lower area, now on the higher part. Now we're going to come onto the dunes. And that's where you see a lovely row of these dunes. It's lovely to see these first of all, but we see a huge abundance of these pyramidals and southern marsh orchids in a little bit further along. So now here, John has just stopped us. He's found this bee orchid. Well, John, that's so exciting to find the bee orchid because they're so rare here this year, apparently. I am hoping to be able to show one right at the end of the tour, which I had found earlier, but to find one out in the dunes is something special, and well done. It's not easy to pick it up because you get many other slight colourings of flowers.
It's slightly dying back, isn't it? But it's definitely a bee orchid.
Well, certainly you can tell, can't you, from the particular appearance, like the bee. That's right, John, where you have your finger over it now, very much like the bee. And it just gives its name away because once you do find it, you can't have any doubt that it's anything other than the bee orchid. But what you always hope is that everyone walks around, they don't trample them and you lose them, because they appear to grow in just sort of one or twos, and it's very rare to find them. And this is wonderful, finding this right at the very top of the dune walk. So here we are then, leaving this one, and again we're moving on towards the pyramidal type orchids from here.
Trek here, where does it go? What is it for?
Well, originally it was constructed so that the steelworks, as it was Steel Company of Wales back in the 1960s, could move iron ore, well, it was limestone really was required. Limestone was brought from Canelli Quarry, and it was to be brought along here. But the authorities at that time debated as to whether or not it would be permanent or not, and it was to be a temporary road. And it was constructed from Canelli Quarry, and after it was completed, although a lot of the limestone that came down had subsequently been brought in from quarries in Derbyshire because we couldn't produce enough. But nevertheless, huge lorries used to come along here until such time the deep water harbour was completed, so that they could bring in the much larger ships of iron ore from abroad. And this, in fact, has always been said to be the basis on which the works have continued to prosper. If we had not had the deep water harbour, then the works would not have continued. But early March or southern March again, Sandra?
I think it's southern, isn't it?
We've come off the main walk right by the sea where we were a moment ago, and we've come into this slack, which is one of the most popular slacks of the whole of the dunes when it comes to finding the orchids. And this is the slack where it's actually quite marshy when we get a bit closer. It's one of the classical areas where apparently the famous Fen Orchid is to be found. But I did speak with the warden, Dave, earlier, and he has told me they think there may be one or two to be found here, but they haven't yet found them. So they're at this stage at the moment. But it is one of the very rare ones. But we're going to go along and have a look. And I've got Sandra here. Well, Sandra is one of those who knows a lot about orchids, you see. So we're going to get Sandra, see if we can find a Fen Orchid. I doubt it, but we'll have a look. Well, here, can you see these, Stuart? Can you see the little red flowers here? They're beautifully formed, these little red ones, and this is the Hellebron orchid. We hadn't seen many of these until this slack, as it's known, and a slack is in fact the area which is often identified with the growth of different orchids. As I said, hopefully we might find a Fen Orchid, but that is very, very rare, and by all accounts even rarer this year than before. But to see the Hellebron, a lovely colour, and it's its early stage, and it really is something special because we haven't seen that one until today. So pyramidal ones we've just come from, now the lovely Hellebron ones. We've seen a bee orchid as well, so we're seeing a fair mixture today. So we'll have a little wander. You can see Lawrence has been showing these pictures. You can see how marshy it is just in behind us as well. And when we look at this, you can see the area. We can't go any further into this now, but that is where possibly the Fen Orchid will be growing. But we'll see if we can find some wild strawberries now. Strawberries have just come in, but we can't find any of those strawberries. Well, here we are. Can I thank you all so much, having made the trip. 3 of ours, of course, 2 had to go back to the cricket, and Brian has left us just a little bit earlier. But it's just wonderful that we've completed it. It has been very, very hot, hasn't it, today? But we saw this wonderful orchids. I've never seen in such an abundance of the pyramidal orchids that we saw along the coastal path. And it was wonderful to see them and to see as well what were the orchids that you discovered? Those red ones that I love so much, the Helleborns, and there's that slack we just came through that I always call Sandra Slack because that's where she first introduced me to these rich names of the orchids that we've seen here today. This fennel, by contrast, it's just got such a lovely smell. And you hear about all these ferns and herbs that you hear about, the herbs that are good, and they always talk about fennel. And when we came for a walk here many years ago, and someone told me about this fennel. Ever since I've loved it. And but it seems to retain its strong sort of smell, its fragrance early on, but it rapidly does lose it after it's been picked. But it is a lovely one. Anyway, it'll revive us after that walk through the desert at the end, and I just hope you've all enjoyed it. And as we get to the end, we're just going to have a look finally at the bee orchid. It's actually the B-E-E, Buzz Bee Orchid, which is very rare, but we have found one here in the unusual place in the car park. So we're just going to have a look at that, and then that's the end of the walk and the last walk until September. So have a nice summer rest, and we'll revive ourselves and start again in September. And again, a big thanks to the man behind the camera here. We can't see him, but Lawrence has brought a new dimension into it all this year, and it's been wonderful having him with us. And when you think he's pulls the equipment around all the way, a big thank you. So we're going to go into the Prince of Wales and buy him a well-deserved pint. Off we go then. Well, we've actually come along to the car park. You see the main road is just behind here, so you might say it's an unlikely place for the orchids to be found when we think we've been right in the depth at the heart of the dunes. But strangely, the bee orchid does just grow here, but very rarely and very occasionally, and here it is. If you can zoom down here, you can actually see it just looks very much like the bee. If you can see underneath it, can you see that? Where my finger is. And it's so precious, this bee orchid, and people come from a long way to find them. And you always think they're so exposed here that someone will just run through and the whole thing will ruin. But there's the famous bee orchid. There's no others. We've looked all the way around here where they're often found. But there we are. We found it at the end. That's what we were searching for. We found it. That's the end. We were looking for Fen Orchid, but instead of the Fen Orchid, we found the bee orchid.
I'll tell you something now you don't know about the bee orchid.
Oh, here we are.
Oh. It actually emits a scent like a female bee, and that attracts the male bee in as well. And I did that in the science thing. But it actually emits a scent as well.
What the
flower?
The bee flower does.
Yep.
Gosh, it's wonderful nature, isn't it?
So in many ways then, Brian, we could expect the female bee to be here, is that right?
Well, the male bee comes in, hones in on the scent.
Right, oh I see.
And the vision, of course, so that'll be...
Well, next time we'll all be here waiting to see if we can find the bee here as well. But whatever, it's good to see Brian back here as well. Brian, remember, was our advance party. He was going to search out for the bee for us. He's found it. So we're very grateful to Brian for being here at the end, and so grateful that we're all together. So there we are. That really is the end. That's the end before the summer. As I said, a nice respite, and hope everyone's enjoyed it. Really good.